The Atlanta Falcons are at the center of a big question making the rounds. Could they pull off one of the biggest trades in franchise history? While nothing official has surfaced, rumors are swirling about a potential move for Cowboys superstar Micah Parsons. There's no concrete report that Atlanta has reached out, but the mere idea of it raises serious possibilities that could reshape the team's future. This isn't just a baseless rumor. There are real reasons why a Parsons trade, while unlikely, isn't completely out of the question. The Cowboys are in a tricky financial situation. As the salary cap continues to rise, so do the price tags for elite players. We've already seen Jamar Chase reset the market for wide receivers, and before that it was Myles Garrett for defensive stars. With every new blockbuster deal, Parsons' price only climbs higher, and the Cowboys don't have the best track record of handling contract extensions quickly. Now imagine Parsons demanding a deal worth $42 million per year. That's a realistic number based on where the market is heading. Would Jerry Jones be willing to pay it? Dallas has already committed massive money to Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and after a disappointing season, do they want to sink even more of their future cap into one player? Or would they consider moving Parsons in exchange for multiple first-round picks to retool their roster? To be clear, there's no official word that the Cowboys are shopping Parsons, but some reports from Dallas insiders suggest a little tension between him and the organization. His outspoken personality and off-field actions haven't always meshed well with the front office. While this doesn't mean a trade is on the horizon, it does spark the question, could the Cowboys actually be open to moving their defensive superstar? If they were, the Falcons would be an obvious landing spot. Atlanta has been searching for a dominant pass rusher for years, striking out on top free agents and struggling to hit on edge rushers in the draft. Instead of gambling on another unproven player, why not go after a sure thing? Parsons is already one of the best in the game, but acquiring him would come at a steep price. Likely 2 first-round picks and a third-rounder. That might sound costly, but when you consider what Khalil Mack was worth in his prime, it's not unrealistic. Then there's the contract. If Atlanta pulled off this move, they'd have to extend Parsons immediately, probably in the range of 4 years, $168 million, with at least $115 million guaranteed. That's a massive commitment, but it would give the Falcons a true game-changer on defense, someone who could instantly elevate the entire unit. Now, let's take this a step further. What if Atlanta had made this move a few years ago? Which picks would they have given up? It's an interesting thought experiment, but the bigger question remains, is this just a fun hypothetical, or could the Falcons actually make a bold move for one of the league's most dominant defenders? Let's say the Falcons had traded for Micah Parsons back in 2021. That would mean no Bijan Robinson, no Drake London, but also no Vic Beasley, no Takk McKinley, and no Duke Riley. Those were all players drafted to fix the pass rush, but none lived up to expectations. And that's the real dilemma. Do you trust your ability to draft well, or do you go all in on a proven superstar? If the Falcons truly believe they're one dominant pass rusher away from being a contender, this could be the move that puts them over the top. But if they're wrong, they could be giving up too much draft capital in a league where depth is crucial. So Falcons fans, what would you do? Would you give up 2 first-round picks for Parsons? Would you commit $42 million per year to one defensive player? Or do you trust the front office to finally get it right in the draft? This decision is even bigger when you consider where the Falcons are right now. They're at a crossroads. Do they keep building through the draft, hoping their picks eventually turn into top-tier talent? Or do they take a massive swing and land a player who could transform their defense overnight? Because let's be honest, when was the last time Atlanta had a true defensive superstar? The Falcons haven't had a pass rusher that truly scared opposing quarterbacks since John Abraham, and that was over a decade ago. That's why this conversation matters. Atlanta has spent years searching for an elite edge rusher, but they've either missed in the draft or settled for short-term free agents. If Parsons were actually available, and that's a big if, he's the kind of player who could immediately change the identity of this defense. He's not just a pass rusher, he's a game wrecker. He can drop into coverage, stop the run, and most importantly, get to the quarterback at an elite level, something the Falcons haven't had in years. But let's not ignore the risks. A move like this means giving up premium draft picks, which limits the ability to build depth at other key positions. If Parsons gets injured or doesn't live up to his massive contract, the Falcons would be stuck with a deal that eats up a huge chunk of their salary cap. That's the gamble. And here's another big question. Would trading for Parsons actually make the Falcons a Super Bowl contender? That has to be the goal, right? If you're making this kind of move, it's because you believe you're on the verge of something special. But is Atlanta there yet? Kirk Cousins is coming in as the new franchise quarterback, but he's 36 and coming off an Achilles injury. The offensive line has some question marks after losing Drew Dahlman in free agency. The secondary has talent, but it's still a work in progress. So what's the right move? If Parsons becomes available, the Falcons should absolutely pick up the phone. But does this front office have the guts to pull the trigger? That's the real question. Terry Fontenot has been patient and methodical in his approach, avoiding splashy moves. Would he break that trend for a player like Parsons? At the end of the day, this is the kind of decision that can define a franchise. If the Falcons truly believe Parsons is the missing piece, then go for it. If the Falcons decide not to trade for Micah Parsons, then they have no choice but to get their draft picks right, because this fan base isn't going to wait much longer for the defense to be fixed. No matter what, the Falcons need a true difference maker on that side of the ball. And the longer they wait, the more they risk wasting what could be a prime window to compete. Look at the moves they've already made this offseason. Kirk Cousins is now in place, giving the Falcons stability at quarterback for the first time since Matt Ryan left. They have plenty of firepower on offense with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. But what about the defense? Yes, Atlanta added Leonard Floyd, Jordan Fuller, and Devondre Campbell. Those are solid players, but let's be honest. None of them are game changers at Parsons' level. Floyd is a good veteran pass rusher, but at 32 years old, he's not a long-term solution. Fuller and Campbell will help, but they aren't going to turn this defense into a top-tier unit overnight. That's why this decision is so important. If the Falcons believe they're just one elite defensive player away from competing for an NFC championship, then a bold move for Parsons might be worth the price. But if they're still a few years away, then holding on to their first-round picks and continuing to build through the draft is probably the smarter approach. And here's the key point. If they don't trade for Parsons, they absolutely must get their draft picks right. This team cannot afford another failed attempt at fixing the pass rush. We've seen it before. Vic Beasley, Takk McKinley, even going back to Jamal Anderson. Atlanta's track record with drafting edge rushers hasn't been great, and they can't afford to make the same mistake again. So what's the best path forward? Do the Falcons take a big swing and bring in a proven superstar? Or do they trust the draft and hope they finally land a dominant pass rusher? One way or another, they have to find an answer, because this defense isn't going to fix itself.